So we'll be now moving to the second paper, Pursuit of Brevity, which will be presented by Javed Hazarika from Delhi. This paper was presented in the MRSI seminar session titled as Netting the Big Fish. Javed won the jury's runner-up award at the last year's MRSI. And this paper tries to tackle a critical issue in the MR industry, which is lengthy questionnaires. As we all know, research questionnaires are lengthy and respondents are getting more and more impatient. One way of shortening questionnaires is to conduct modular surveys, that is, not all questions are asked from all respondents. But this brings in the complication of missing data, and the analysis methods are not tuned to handle very high level of missing values. In this paper, they are suggesting the use of matrix completion algorithms to fill in the missing values. A comparison between a control data set where all data is real and test data sets where the data is a mix of real and imputed values. This paper shows that the methods have promise. Now let me give you a brief introduction to our presenter, Javed. Javed passed out of ISI Kolkata with a BStat and MStat. He started his career at CIRM, Chennai as a consultant and worked with them for a year. From 2010 onwards, he has been with IMRB working with the Marketing Sciences Group in Delhi. In his current job, he works with sales forecasting models for FMCG products. Over the years, he has gathered a lot of statistical programming knowledge and he's adept in statistical methods like SAID, GLM, curve fitting, and programming languages like R, VBA, Delphi. He's a fairly regular presenter at various MRSA seminars and other leading forums. Javed is also a music and movie buff. He's interested in drums and has been moving from classic rock to metal now, a bit of Punjabi hip-hop and rap, and follows Hollywood movies. Very intriguing, Javed.
I don't know.
Over to you, Javed.
Thank you, Himali, for those kind words. I don't know where those raps and metal came from. Am I audible to everyone? Good afternoon, everyone. Himali has already given you a description of my paper, but I'll still give one anyways. Basically, the paper talks about long questionnaires and the associated respondents. This has been a problem in market research for a very long time. And in this paper, we are looking at two potential solutions to this problem. And they are not perfect solutions, but they do have some promise in them, and we'll show you throughout this paper. But first, let me give you a description of the problem in detail.
Just a second, they're able to see it.
Can you see the first slide? It says questionnaire length is a big problem. Hello?
Yes, we can see it. Please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So, if long questionnaires are the problem, then obviously the best thing is to write short questionnaires. But this almost always never happens in reality due to many issues. Now, as respondents are getting more and more impatient, questionnaire lengths, however, are not seeing an equitable decrease. One clever solution to this problem is to keep all the questions in your study, but do not ask all the questions to all the respondents. So basically, you are adopting a modular design in your study. But the problem with modular designs is that you will get missing values. So people have only seen some of your questions. For the questions that they have not seen, you are getting missing values. So now the problem is, how do you bridge this gap? One particular example where modular designs can be implemented is the image matrix section of the questionnaire. So typically, respondents are flooded with a large number of imagery statements. Like let's say durable, innovative, technology, popular, stylish. The respondent is confused. But sometimes he just blankly keeps on marking the same thing, for all the statements, for all the brands. Now, let's say instead of showing all the image statements to this respondent, we only show a part of the imagery statements. Let's say we ask him only durable, technology, and stylish. Then, for the other image statements, we get missing values, and our data set will look something like this. So, can you see this table? It's like a white and black checkered flag. Hello?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay, so you can see for the first respondent, he has only seen innovative, popular, modern and value. He hasn't seen technology and stylish. So there are missing values for technology and stylish. For respondent number 2, there are missing values for popular and modern, and so on for the other respondents. Now, so basically under a modular design, our data set would look like this. So the question is, how do we fill in the blanks? Now, one real life example where filling in where this missing values are being filled in is the e-commerce example. So imagine that I have bought 2 books from an e-tailer. Now, every time I open the website, like the website also gives me suggestions of other books that I might be interested in. So the question is, how is the website able to generate these suggestions? The answer is that the website looks at other people like me, who are also looking at these books, and they try to see like what are the other books that they are buying, and in a way, it is able to get all those suggestions, and they are able to supply those suggestions to me also. So basically, it is learning about me also, it is learning about the other respondents, and it is trying to cross-relate all this information from other people to me. Now, obviously the mathematics of this example is not clear because there is none, and we'll try to show you how, we'll try to apply this kind of a problem, apply this solution to our kind of a market research kind of a problem. Okay, so we have basically looked at 2 methods to fill in the blanks, to fill in the missing values in your data set. The first method is called nuclear norm regularization. So it basically uses the knowledge about the person and the relationships within the data that it finds to fill in the missing values. The second method is called item response theory. This is also a similar method as the first one, but here it is combining the respondent's propensity to agree with some statement with the attribute's propensity to be agreed upon to produce an estimate for the missing values. Now, I'll explain both these methods in detail with examples so that it is clear to you. Okay, nuclear norm regularization, or NNR in short. This is a method. It is similar to factor analysis. Here it is trying to break down the data into a lower dimension data. It basically breaks down the data into 3 components. First is the variance explained by each factor. Okay. Then it is the respondent's scores on each factor, and then it is the attribute loading for each factor. But you might be aware that factor analysis will not work, when there are too many missing values. Okay. So the beauty about this approach is that the nuclear norm regularization, it will work even if your data set has large number of missing values, and it will work on your data to give you those three components, which are the variance explained by the factors, the respondent scores, and the attribute loadings. And using these three components, you can combine them mathematically to complete the entire matrix. So basically, you start with a matrix which is filled with missing values, and in the end, you end up with a matrix which is complete. There are no missing values. Now I'll show you mathematically, like I'll try to explain the mathematics behind this process. Let's say there were two attributes, attribute A1 and attribute A2. A certain respondent was asked attribute A1 but not attribute A2. Okay, so we have a missing value for attribute A2. Now, using nuclear norm regularization, we have derived two factors from the data, factor 1 and factor 2. Okay, and the green dot on the x-axis, that represents the factor score for factor 1 for this respondent. Okay, and the second green dot, this represents the factor score on the other factor, the factor 2. So you can see that this respondent is very high on factor 1 and not as high on factor 2. Now let's try to understand the attributes themselves. This is attribute A1. On attribute A1, the actual score was 5. Okay. And attribute A2 was left missing, so we have to calculate the score for this attribute. Now you can see that between A1 and A2, A1 is the one which is much closer to factor 1 than A2 is. So we can kind of say that the respondent score since A2 is much farther from factor 1 than A1 is, so definitely the score on A2 will be much lower than what is on A1. So you can kind of expect it to be something like 4 or 3. Is this process clear?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Okay, then we move on to the next method, which is item response theory. This method was initially used in students for testing of students in examinations. Using certain information about the student and about the questions, it is theoretically possible to predict how the student will perform in another question. Let me clarify this with a more clear example. Okay, so here we take the case of 5 students and an exam which has 5 questions. So the green square means that student has cleared that question successfully, and a red square means that he couldn't clear that question. Now, basis this green and red dots, we have calculated some basic abilities for the students and some difficulty levels for the questions. So you can see that student 2, who has got all greens, is the most skillful student. He has given an ability of score of 5 out of 5. Similarly, if you look at question number 5, you can see that it is the most difficult question because only one student has been able to clear it successfully. So it is given the highest difficulty level, 4. Now what we are saying is that using these ability levels and the difficulty levels, we can predict the performance of a student on another hidden question. So So let's say we have another question, question number 6, which was asked to all the students. Hello? Yeah. Which was asked to all the students except student number 5. Now, what we are saying is, like using the IRT method, we can predict the performance of this student in this question, even though he had not actually answered it. Now, this was student 5, now this was student 5 exam paper in his last exam, and so it ties in quite well with his ability score, which is very low. Now using the difficulty level of that question and the ability level of that student, we will know that this student will get a very low score. He will not be able to clear that question. So now the IRT principle can be extended to questions asked in a market research survey also. We can get the respondent's propensity to agree and the extent to which a question invites agreement. And by combining these two, we can fill in the missing values. Now we'll go to the real life data set that we had used to test these both data sets, to test this method. I'll first describe the data set. It was not a truly modular data set, so we created one from a real survey. So for each respondent, we deleted half of the responses at random. So on this artificial data set, we tested both our solutions. We had around 100 respondents and around 100 attributes, and it was a 10-point scale. And this is briefly the methodology that we are going to follow. So from the original data set, we deleted 50% respondents randomly. Then on this modular data set, we'll apply our algorithms to create an imputed data set, which is like a full data set only, where missing values have been filled in using our algorithms. And then we'll compare this imputed data set with the original data set. Okay, so while comparing the original data set with the new data set, which is the imputed data set, we will look at these aspects, which is, are we able to reproduce results accurately at the aggregate level? Are we able to reproduce results at the respondent level? Are we able to resurrect two-way relationships in the data, such as cross-tabulations and correlations? And if we go to higher order data analysis, such as factor analysis, regressions, and drivers and networks, do we get the same kind of results from both data sets or not? So we'll check the first point first. Now all these results that we'll be showing you will be the results that we have generated at 50% missing values. So basically we have an original data set. We delete 50% of the responses, and then we run our algorithms, and then we'll compare the imputed data set and the original data set. Okay, now this is the picture at the aggregate level. In this chart, what we are plotting is, on the x-axis, we have the mean scores of the attributes. This is the 10-point scale, the mean scores on the 10-point scale. We have on the x-axis we have the actual mean scores. On the y-axis you have the mean scores from the imputed data set. Now you can see that the results are quite good. The mean absolute error is 0.11 on a 10-point scale, which means that it is quite good. Now if we go to the next higher level, which is that do we get it right at the respondent level? Okay, so what we'll do now is, okay, so now we will look at the respondent cross attribute level data, which means that there were around 100 respondents and there were around 100 attributes, so that comes out to around 10,000 data points for each data matrix. Now, here this is the cross tabulation between the actual data and the imputed data, and you'll see that the diagonal of this matrix is quite heavily populated. Actually, if you add these blue boxes, it comes out to be around 84%, which is a very high classification rate given the fact that we have deleted 50% of the responses. Now, now we will look at two-way relationships. As an example, we have picked up two attributes. We have picked up value for money and consideration. And we are calculating the mean score for consideration at each level of VFM. So in this chart, what you are seeing is on the x-axis we have the different levels of value for money. So what we are seeing is that when value for money is 1, the mean consideration level is 2.22. When value for money is 3, the mean consideration level is 3.35. So this is the relationship between these two variables as calculated from the actual data set. Now we can do the same thing, exactly the same thing from the imputed data set also, and then overlay one on top of each other to see how close they are. And this is exactly what we are talking about. The red line that you see shows the relationship between VFM and consideration if you calculate it from the imputed data set. So you can see that the lines are very close to each other. Now, this algorithm has done a good job of creating this relationship between these two variables. But remember that the original data set that we started with had around hundreds of attributes. Now, to completely approve of this method, we need to look at the relationships between each and every pair of those 100 C2 combinations. Now, one easy way to compare such a large number of two-way relationships is to look at their correlations, which means you calculate the correlation between the variables from the actual data set and you calculate the correlation between the variables from your imputed data set, and you see how close they are. In this case, for VFM and consideration, the numbers are actually quite close. You get an actual correlation of 0.73 and an imputed correlation of 0.78. So the error is quite low. But to plot around 10,000 pairs of variables, you need to look at a scatter plot. In this chart, what we are doing is, in the x-axis, we have the correlation between pairs of variables from the actual data set, and on the y-axis, we have correlations between pairs of variables from the imputed data set. Now, there is a frequency legend on the side of the chart. You can see that there are quite a few green dots in the upper right corner of the chart, but the scatter is not a perfectly straight line across the diagonal. There is some variation towards the middle. It looks like a broken pine tree. But on the overall, the results are satisfactory. We have got the low wherever there were low correlations in the actual data set, we have got low correlations, and wherever there were high correlations in the actual, we have also predicted to be actual. In fact, the mean absolute error turns out to be 0.09, but there is a slight tendency to overestimate the correlations. Okay. Yeah. Now we'll move on to the other higher order analysis, such as factor analysis. So here we ran simple exploratory factor analysis on both the data sets. On the original data set, from the original data set, we seem to derive three factors, which is convenience, performance, and aesthetics. From the imputed data set also, we tend to get the same three factors, although the variance explained differ by some amount. Next, after factor analysis, what we did was we ran a regression, which is a regression of the factor scores on the dependent type variables such as overall opinion. Now here also you can see that the results are actually quite similar. If you look at the regression coefficients derived from both data sets, the coefficients are quite close to each other. But post regression, we try to see if we are able to get the same structural model of the data. To this end, we tried running Bayesian belief networks on the factors as well as a small set of attributes. But this is where the algorithm broke down. It was not able to perfectly reproduce the structure of the data, and so imputed scores are a good substitute, but they are not fully able to reproduce the full complexity of the data. And now in this table, I will try to summarize the results of all the runs that we did for both algorithms at various levels of missing values. The first column of this table represents the proportion of missing values that were in the data. So the first row is at 10%, second row is at 30%. The first column shows the mean absolute percentage error. Here it is written as MAPE. The mean absolute percentage error for the aggregate mean score. Now if you can see, for both the methods, for NNR as well as for IRT, both methods are actually quite good at getting the aggregate mean scores right, even at higher levels of deletion. So you can see, even at 70% level of deletion, the error rate is only 3% or 2%. Now when we come to the respondent levels, the respondent level attribute scores, NNR is a slightly better, even at 50%, but as we increase the level of missing values, the error rate tend to increase significantly. Then we look at the simple correlations between the variables. NNR is good at reproducing correlations, but IRT seems to be a little better at this approach. And lastly, we look at the partial correlations. In reproducing partial correlation between variables, neither method actually does a good job. Though IRT is noticeably worse, errors are high even at 10% missing. So actually we believe that this was the reason why we are not able to get the structural hierarchy of the data even at the lower levels of missing values. And in the regression hierarchy, in the regression analysis, you can see that NNR is getting the regression hierarchy of the variables even at higher levels of missing value. So even at 50% missing value, NNR is getting the same level of regression hierarchy, whereas IRT seems to have broken down just at 50%. Okay, now to conclude, modular surveys do offer a viable solution to the problem of long questionnaires. Now we have seen that missing values can be filled in via the algorithm that we showed you. At the aggregate level and at the respondent level and even two-way relationships, we are able to get good results. Although the higher level analysis do tend to suffer from the missing values. Looking at, we need to test the method on other data sets to see whether we are able to handle binary data. If higher levels of deletion are feasible in larger samples, and whether the deletion should be random or there should be like a fixed bridge design kind of a approach. And we also need to find out how to tackle the challenge thrown up by complex analysis such as driver analysis. And we suggest that such methods be applied via CAPI, especially tracking surveys. And the effective sample size is less, but the gains in data quality, due to reduced respondent fatigue, is too important to be ignored. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jawad.
Yes, thank you.
We can now open for questions.
Yes. Not now.
Well, Raja here, since there is no one is asking questions, let me ask.
Yes.
I have actually two questions. One is you actually compared the actual data
Yes.
with the imputed data, right?
Yes.
Did you also run with let's say the reduced data and then see whether that produced the same answer? That's the
You
first.
mean only the data, without the missing values filled?
Yeah. With the missing values, did you run it, with that set of data? For all you know, it might have produced the same kind of answers and or the same kind of error margin.
Yeah. Okay. No, we didn't check this.
Okay.
Although we could try this in the future.
That actually I thought was dependent on the sample size that you had. Could you give an idea about what is the sample size that you checked?
See, the example that size was around 100 in my data set.
Okay. The second question that I have is that you chose to use the image data and then decide to, let's say, delete some of the random data from the image set of questions, attitude battery, correct?
Yes.
Let me just give you a scenario. Let's say it may be from a television as a product category, and assume for the time being that you assume that there are 4 kinds of segments. One is feature driven, other one is aesthetics driven, and fourth may be economy driven, and then the third may be economy driven, and the fourth may be the technology driven.
Okay.
Feature is one where we have multiple sets of features in television. Aesthetics is, the television looks nice and so on and so forth. Economy is the price may be higher or lower and all that. And technology is, this is a new technology and so on and so forth. Now, there are people who are likely to fall in one of these, buckets or one of these segments.
Okay.
Suppose if you, did not ask, let's say, questions on features to a respondent.
Okay.
Actually decide, and how will the, how will the, let's say, algorithm decide whether the person is actually a feature, is belonging to feature-driven segment. And maybe that is one question is more to do with what kind of data you might like to choose to, let's say, impute, and what kind of data is not good for actually imputing. Would you like to answer that?
Okay. But can we safely assume that a respondent will typically belong to only one, type of this? I mean, like you are saying that, let's say I am more interested only in the technology segment of questions and not so much in the, other parts.
I don't want to be, let's say I am a respondent. I had not answered any questions relating to technology driven because you chose not to ask me.
Okay.
How will I be classified as technology driven eventually? Is the question.
That could come from this way, is that, see, there will be other people who will be shown the technology section questions. And what we are assuming is that let's say these people, the people who have seen the technology questions, their responses on other questions would have been similar to what the first person would have given. So basically we'll be borrowing information from other people who have seen the technology questions, okay, and using these borrowed responses we'll impute some responses for this person, and then we'll find that this person is indeed a technology person.
Well, I understand that. I mean, this is obviously one of the fusion techniques.
Yes.
The point is, when it comes to anything relating to somebody's, let's say, preferences and emotion, I don't know if imputing is a good way of doing it.
Imputing may not be the best way of doing things, but as we have seen in our case, like we were able to get the two-way relationships to quite some good degree. So basically, let's say, technology and let's say economy behave in a certain way. Okay, and we are getting that behavior, to quite a good extent. So if I know the responses on the economy questions for this respondent, I can very well simulate his responses for the technology questions using this relationship.
Okay, that's all I have. I leave it to others to ask other questions, obviously. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, John. Here.
Yes, hi, Survi.
I have one question. Actually, not really a question, but can you just summarize that what is the difference in the two approaches? One of those intensive so that what we take back is something easier for all of us.
The main difference between the two methods would be that the first method, which is nuclear norm regularization, it is like a deterministic. It's a deterministic algorithm, which means that like however many times you run the algorithm, you'll always get the same answer. In the IRT, there is a little bit of probabilistic. It's a little probabilistic, which is that you may not get exactly the same result every time you run the algorithm. So basically, it is suggested that you run the algorithm, let's say 10 or 20 times, and you then take an average. So it's basically like it's a probabilistic simulation where you take the average in the end to get your final response. Whereas nuclear norm regulation is a very swift one-shot process. You just run it and you get your responses. And as regards these two methods, like what we have seen is like from the software that we are using to run these algorithms, nuclear norm regulation takes very less time, whereas IRT is quite a time-consuming process. So like if it comes to but both methods are quite good at handling large data sets. So what we are saying is even if your data set is large, the overhead time for both methods is quite less. But for IRT you will end up using more time because you have to run many simulations to get your final responses.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello. I'm from LMRD. I also have two questions. One is if we are asking like half of the respondents the number of attributes,
Yes.
is there a minimum number of responses for each attribute that we should get if we are to do it?
We right now I think it's a little early for us to comment like how much minimum sample we require, but basically for each if you're looking at attribute wise for like how many respondents should be there for each attribute, like that I think we can go with our traditional whatever number we go in our standard surveys. But if you look at the other side of the picture, which is like how many like for each respondent how many questions should there be at least, like there we can say that each respondent should have at least 10 something like that questions. It can't be very less because see essentially what we are trying to do is we are trying to understand about this respondent from the responses that he has given. So if the respondent has given a very few number of responses, we can't judge that respondent to use the term properly. So from a respondent side, we need at least 10 questions per respondent, and from the attribute side, we can have like the standard number of respondents that we keep for any general study. Is this clear?
Yeah. One more question.
Yes.
In the presentation, when you are looking at the factors from the imputed and the actual,
Yes.
Actual data set, you have, like you mentioned that it's adequate. How do you, anyway, although the variance does not match,
Yes.
factors are adequate. How do you decide the adequacy? Whether it's adequate.
We haven't said that it's adequate, but actually like the primary satisfaction for us was that we were able to, first of all, we are getting the same factors. Like the original data set also gave you those 3 factors, and this data set is also giving you the same 3 factors. And it is very well possible that if we rerun the factor analysis at a lower level of missing values, let's say at a 30% level or 25% level, then maybe even the variance explained figures will match each other. Of course, this is not the best thing that we have got, but we can try these at lower levels of missing values. So, like the slide that you are currently seeing here, the analysis has been run at 50% missing values. Hello.
Yeah.
This is the second.
Yeah. Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Any more questions before we wind up the session? Okay. So I guess thanks again to Jordan and Javed. Today's papers were very interesting, and they addressed very current and relevant issues. I'm sure this would spur many others to do further exploratory work on this in order to perfect the methodology. And I'm also sure the presentations will generate more email questions. If you have any further questions, please email them to Jones and Raja. I also want to take this opportunity to thank Raja, Jones and the team for this great initiative of exposing us to this valuable pool of knowledge. And also creating a platform that allows everyone to interact. As mentioned earlier, Raja, Jones and the team, we all look forward to more of these sessions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Himali. Before we close, as I mentioned briefly in the beginning, the current MRSI seminar series is actually being extended by one more session, and that will be held on the 30th April at the same time, that is 3 p.m. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning, the session will feature a very short paper. In fact, I didn't mention that it will feature a very short paper that was selected among 16, 90-minute pitches, so to say. And it will also feature another paper which won the Global Mondelez Business Insights Awards in 2014, and the Mondelez paper is titled Passing the Buck, and it will be presented by Muzammil Wagle and the team from the IMRB World Panel. I am sure all of you will be looking forward to the next session. And with that, we have come to the end of the current session, today's session. Thanks, Himali, once again for chairing today's session, and thanks to the 2 presenters, and thanks to all of you who attended the session today. I will see you all on the 30th April, and until then, thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.